graveyard caretaker's reflection never quite matched his movements anymore. Reflections Unlimited occupied a corner lot on Merchant Street, selling mirrors of every size and style. When Jacob Reeves inherited the store from his uncle in May, he thought it was a strange business model. Who bought mirrors anymore? But the books showed steady profit. His uncle's final letter contained one instruction: never stay after closing. Lock up at 6 and leave immediately. Jacob dismissed it as eccentricity. The first week, he stayed late doing inventory, walking between rows of mirrors that reflected him hundreds of times over. The store felt different at night, quieter but not empty, as if something listened. On Thursday, he noticed a mirror in the back corner he'd never cataloged, an antique full-length piece with a baroque frame covered in a heavy cloth. Jacob pulled the cloth away and saw his reflection staring back, except his reflection smiled when he didn't. Jacob stepped away. The reflection remained, watching him with his own face, wearing his own clothes, but animate with separate intention. It pressed its palm against the glass from inside, and Jacob felt the cold spread through the store like breath. He covered the mirror, but walking through the aisles, he began noticing discrepancies in other reflections. In one, he stood slightly to the left of his actual position. In another, his head was tilted at an angle his neck hadn't turned. Small differences, easily dismissed as tricks of light or tired eyes, until he saw himself in a mirror he wasn't standing in front of. The reflection occupied a mirror 20 feet away, watching him through the glass. When Jacob moved, it didn't follow. It simply observed, wearing his face like a mask that didn't quite fit. Jacob called his uncle's lawyer, demanding answers. The lawyer sighed. Your uncle discovered something about that store. Mirrors don't just reflect, they collect. Every person who's ever looked into them leaves something behind. An echo, an impression. And in Reflections Unlimited, with thousands of mirrors over decades, those impressions accumulated. What are you saying? That store is full of people who aren't quite there anymore. Fragments left behind in glass, and they watch. They wait. They want to be whole again. Jacob should have burned the place down. Instead, he tried to prove it wrong. He smashed the baroque mirror with a hammer. 7 years bad luck, his grandmother would have said. But when the glass shattered, his reflection didn't break with it. It stepped out, emerging from the frame like someone climbing through a window. It wore his face but moved wrong, joints bending at angles that shouldn't work. Other mirrors began cracking spontaneously, and more reflections emerged. Dozens of Jacobs, each slightly different, each incomplete, each desperately trying to rejoin the original. They surrounded him, these fragmented selves, reaching with hands that passed through solid matter but gripped him like ice. Jacob understood then. His uncle had stayed late once, had broken the wrong mirror, had released something that took pieces of him night after night until there wasn't enough left to leave. The reflections pulled Jacob toward the empty baroque frame, not to harm, to complete. They needed what he had: substance, reality, the quality of being actual rather than reflected. Jacob fought, but fighting yourself is fighting motion itself. The fragments knew his every move before he made it, being pieces of him, being possibilities of him, being the versions left behind in glass over a lifetime of casual glances. The graveyard caretaker's voice dropped to a whisper. They found the store locked from inside. No Jacob, no damage except one broken mirror. But every other mirror in that place showed the same thing. Jacob Reeves, standing in endless reflection, pressed against glass from the wrong side, looking out. He touched his own face, checking for solidity. The store's still there, still selling mirrors. New owner doesn't stay late either. But sometimes customers complain about the mirrors showing them twice, once where they stand and once where they don't. The second reflection always watches longer, Always waits to see if you'll stay after closing.